these native plant communities of Prince William County specifically, and then kind of transition into how we can learn from those systems and bring that into our own landscapes. So that's one of the things I'm really focused on, is that very thing, trying to, as Doug Cowan kind of puts it, that what they call the home, national park with. I'll warn you, I always put way too many slides, so I'm gonna be moving through a lot of slides in the next 50 minutes, and we'll take the questions at the end. But if there's anything, I think this is all being recorded, so you can pick up anything that you didn't quite get on that slide. You can pick it up later, something that you'll go back and check out. So, all right, just to let you know, so I did grow up in North Virginia, in Arlington. I lived for 29 years in Prince William County, so I did a lot of work with, while here, I worked further up Fairfax for years, but I worked in Prince William with the Plant Society, Princeton Wildflower Society, Princeton Conservation Alliance, and with a lot of organizations. So we did a lot of work to document native plant communities, but also to educate and restore areas and things like that. So that's kind of one of my big things. And the first plant here, by the way, I used to live over not far from Signal Hill Road. When I moved in there, there's still kind of farms out there. You had old fence roads, and this is bristly locust, which is one of the coolest native small trees, but you hardly ever find it. It used to be common along old fence lines, but as they develop land, they rip down the old hedgerows and fence lines, and you lose the plant. It's a really cool species that if you find it, you can actually get a cutting or something of it. Cool to get. All right, so we typically live in these sterile landscapes. These pictures are from Prince William County, so these are actual communities here where they're biological wastelands, pretty much. They're very biologically impoverished. We put down a very few things in terms of ornamentals, grass. And I remember years ago jogging when I was fit, much younger, jogging through a community here in Prince William, hearing one bird in like 3 blocks. Yeah, that's how impoverished they are biologically. And even when we have an area that's more open, we do these kind of typical plantation style plantings, low species numbers, often non-natives, a lot of turf. So it really does not in any way resemble or function like a natural area. And this is over off of one of the Prince William Parkway, but it's a stormwater management pond. So even there, it's so oversimplified. It's just that it would, whatever was allowed to grow in this case, cattails, which are fine, but there's really not much there in terms of the plant material for organisms to use for living. And this is along Prince William Parkway, same thing. We always mow it down, very simple. Now this is over, if you're not familiar with, it's the intersection of Davis Ford, Evans Ford, and Evans Ford, and whichever one goes over to yeah. So this is the old farmhouse there at that corner. It's a beautiful, massive white oak. I love this tree. I lived near this tree for 14 years, but it also is a dead end. It's got no associated plants, and when it dies, there's nothing to replace it. So all these things co-evolve with other organisms. So they live with lots of other organisms and are constantly reproducing, and new offspring are coming up. So I use it as an example of something. It's a cool thing to have. It's a wonderful thing to build around, but we need to remember that these things did evolve to coexist with lots of other organisms. So we're going to take a little walk through Prince William County now. This is a very unique county. On the west end, you're getting into the valley and ridge on Bull Run Mountain, which is very unique because on the east end, you're in Tidal. You're on the tidal Potomac. So it's one of the few places I know of in the region where you can get such a contrast in geology and your physiographic provinces. And so what we'll do is the areas that are in black are 2 areas we're not going to visit together today, but they're cool areas to go check out. I don't have any good pictures for Bull Run Mountain, and hell, look, I couldn't find my picture. So anyway, but the green ones are places we're going to check out together. So I encourage you to go out and see some of these areas because they're all accessible except for that floodplain on near Signal Hill. I actually took the photo on the Fairfax side. So if you go to Hemlock Overlook Park, you can see that floodplain here. All right, so this is first place is Silver Lake Park. It's right at the base of Bull Run Mountain. It is off of whatever community the road starts at T. Anyway, you can go walk there. You can see the lake itself is on the lower left over here. I'll show it on the screen. Anyway, that's the old quarry below that. What's shown there is when they did the school complex, they laid this out, and there was some notion that there was a wetland. So we went out and checked it out, and lo and behold, it's a globally rare upland depression swamp forest that only occurs in northern Virginia and central Maryland on diabase soils. And so they got the fact that there was a wetland, but they didn't say what it was. So we brought in natural heritage. We actually did survey plots in there. We documented the occurrence and got it into the natural heritage data log. What they also did not do is I should go back one. When they planned this ball field complex, they put it on top of another globally rare plant, northern hardpan basic hickory forest. See in just a minute, it also only occurs in Northern Virginia and Central Maryland. And we tried to get them to switch to this really crappy old field over here full of invasive species. Everybody went for it except for the Park Authority at the time. So we weren't able to do that. But, so here's your depression swamp forest, really cool community. It is a true wetland in the uplands, all driven by surface water. This was adjacent to it in Buckley. This is the northern hardpan basic hickory forest. It occurs on these diabase soil, and diabase is an igneous rock. Do you know what quarries around here? That's diabase. So it pops up all through our region, and you can tell by the quarry sites, a lot of locations. But it's grass dominant in the understory, and the overstory is really short, has big gaps between the crowns, because the soil is so poor, the trees grow really small, and you get a lot of light, and that grass dominant in the understory is a huge indicator. So that's a common poverty oats, which you can grow in your yard, priority grow in your yard. Really good plant to bring in. And then things like twin blade orchid. Anyway, it's a relatively common orchid in these soils. And that's the gaps in the canopy that make the grass dominance possible. And then you also know this is going over to Conway Robinson State Forest, great place to walk. A lot of different ecotypes there. It has some good quality remaining forest. The reason why yellow lane slipper orchids are still there is because they shotgun. They kill enough deer to take the browse pressure off some of the herbaceous plants. It's not regenerating trees, deer eat all the trees. None of them get above waist height. But they have recuperated yellow lane slipper orchids. They also have, this is yellow-eyed grass, pretty common. But that is actually just as rare in our region now as the yellow lane slipper orchid. This is four-leaf milk that used to be with Ted Bradley, who was the famous botanist from our region, did a lot of the original survey plots in this community type Western Fairfax. 80% of the plots had that plant, and none of them had that plant. Only in Conway Robinson. That's all because of shotgun. So without the shotgun honey, you will not get these plants. So this is elsewhere on the site. So this is really this image here is still the northern hardpan basic hickory forest. You can see that kind of not as much grass in this picture. And actually, in Sarah's talk, she was talking about tree age. In a good forest that has not had severe deer browse, at least until recently, you should get age class diversity. So you should see big trees and little trees. And what you should see ultimately is a lot of material through that middle. Lots of shrubs and young trees. And there aren't as many here, but still, it's a very healthy forest with a compact soil profile. You can tell that to all the leaf litter. The lack of green in terms of, there's green there, but that's young native plants. This has got almost no invasives because those soil profiles have not been disturbed in the last 100 years plus. That's key. And that's just a 5-line skink. Came out and visited me while I was out there. And this is our downy leaf rattlesnake. So it's a really cool orchid. It's common in these soil types. This is a really cool rock outcrop. One of the trails goes right by it. And that's called alum root. Usually it's sold with a cultivar named whorlberry, but that's Hoyker americana. And it is an amazing plant, but it's growing in rock outcrops. So it can grow anywhere. And it's sold. You can readily acquire this. And then there's a pine section there where they planted pines and they've actively timber harvested. Soils are kind of disturbed there, but what's interesting is because of the mid-succession condition, the pink lady slipper orchids are there. And in addition, this is American putty root, another orchid. So the orchid species diversity there is really high. It's a great place to find orchids, really cool place to walk, good trail. So I really highly encourage you to go out and visit. All right, so Manassas National Battlefield Park, Native Plant Society has several registry sites there, mostly around meadows. This particular meadow is my favorite. It's not there's one that is easy to get to, it's Heat Cut. There's a parking lot there, Heat Cut, and you'll walk. It's a good place to go see meadow plants. They reintroduced fire there about 8 years ago. So they're doing periodic burns, which is really good for these grass systems. This one is over closer to Sudley Church. This is the parking lot over there, near the little cemetery in the parking lot of the church. And you walk back towards the cut, and this one's off to the left. But this is a really high quality native meadow. One of the reasons why, it's one of the few meadows in the park that was not polluted with switchgrass and big bluestem. They planted switchgrass and big bluestem, which do not belong here. They are only occur in the Piedmont Mountains of Virginia in very rare plant communities with very small ecotypes. But they introduced switchgrass and big bluestem because they were heavily promoted, and they have ruined many of the meadows in the park. Completely dominant. They grow really early, really big, and they lower the biodiversity. So this is never planted. This is what it should look like in these native meadows. Grasses are typically like little bluestem. You get broom sedge, you get deep panic grass, purple top. They're relatively small grasses. The biggest one will grow is Indian grass. There's not even that much here. But then you can see in there already all the goldenrod, a couple of the other plants in there. On the left, you've got hyssop leaf boneset, which is I'm sorry, that's nearly mountain mint. And then on the right, you've got your rough leaf Liatris. It's usually people sell the what they call blazing star. This is I'll show you both of the two that are really native to our county. That's the roughly, this is my favorite plants. It actually grows prolifically. It's a really good plant to get. It's all throughout our region. And then that's purple milkwort, another really cool little meadow plant. And that's Liatris pilosum, which is the other native Liatris in our area. And that grows readily too. It's growing a lot all over the mountain. It's a really cool place. I highly encourage you to walk there. Now, I wanted to talk a little about Nokesville. Several years ago, for a year I did a Christmas bird count and in the Nokesville sector. And a couple of years ago, I was doing one on my own. And, the biomass in terms of birds was 80% starlings. And then there were, brown-headed cowbirds, there were house sparrows, pigeons. They made up 95% of the bird biomass. 5% were the natives. And the reason, what I wanted to really emphasize, people always say, well, it's because people introduced starlings in New York Central Park in whatever, 18, whatever it was. No, that's not why. It's because that is a biological wasteland. That is all non-native species in mowed fields, crops, pasture, lots of endangered species. There's nothing for the native birds to eat. That's the reason why starlings are dominant, because they're adapted to human-altered landscapes. The counties talked this morning, and we heard that reporting of plains the lower 48 have 95% of the land area modified for human activity. Globally, it's 77%. We'll talk about that in a minute. But that's the reason why the native birds aren't in Nokesville. It's because there's nothing. So here we go at Merrimack Farm. Get to see, is this, yeah. So Merrimack Farm, one of the reasons we made a registry site, and it's, of course, it's also owned by the state. This purchase with money from, they were, after 9/11, they were buying up land around Quantico as one of the big things to buffer federal facilities. So there's a big partnership, and Native Plant Society, we went out and documented the communities, but this is a great floodplain. You can go to the Bluebell Festival every year out here. It's a cool walk. American plum, really cool plant. Best ones I've ever seen are on this site, back in the woods, kind of on these old field edges. And then this is a really good quality shrub wetland. So it's a very different community type. Sits at the edge of the floodplain where it meets the upland. Really high quality wetland. And you can see it's shrub dominant. And there's turtlehead, which is a great plant. It's one you can actually grow readily in your yard. It's commercially available. And then that is your winterberry pollen. So that's Ilex verticillata. Another one, again, you can get in the nursery trade. One caution, if you get winterberry holly, when you buy it, it better have berries on it or flowers on it, because it's full of berries. Because that's the way to know it's a female. If you want to get the berries, you have to get the female. So just be aware they're dioecious. So it has different sexes for different plants. All right, so Dove's Landing, another cool place. You can go walk here all the time. When we first surveyed this site for Conservation Alliance, it's because there was concern about what the communities were. So we mapped all the plant communities. What's interesting, if you look at the old aerials, there are these chunks like right there, which was clearly intact forest cover in the 1930s, which tells you if it's still there today, it's probably good, high quality, low soil disturbance, and pretty old. And what we found was the average oak diameter was over 36 inches, and the average tulip tree was 40 inches or greater. This was possibly not cut during the Civil War, likely not cut, which is almost unheard of in our region. So this is one of the oldest tree stands I know of in the northern Virginia region. Really cool. You can walk through this cool trail that's right in the middle. The biggest obvious thing here is the soils are intact, no invasives. Not one thing is growing over the tree. The deer bark or red. So deer browse is a big stressor. And this is in the same site, a younger community. What's kind of cool is you have a bunch of that running cedar or ground pine, as people call it. So it's a club moss, and it occurs in early to mid-succession stands. So you can tell the age of the stand by the presence and abundance of that ground, that running cedar. But this is actually a really good quality stand. It's cool because even though it had been cleared and it's pretty young, the soils are intact, low invasives. Not the whole site's not like that. There's definitely some areas of high disturbance levels. This is pretty cool. All right, so this is on the Bull Run floodplain. It's actually right across from the Fairfax Rod and Gun Club, so you'll hear lots of gunfire. But the Great Bluebell stand, and I think what I love about this is dwarf ginseng. This is actually you can't. Luckily, it is not useful for ginseng the way that the ginseng is. Otherwise, it wouldn't exist because people have over harvested it. But dwarf ginseng is super common in these floodplain communities and wetlands. So it's a really cool plant. And then, of course, the old spring beauty, Latonia virginiana. That's the poster child for the For Virginia program. And this is just such a cool plant. It always reminds me when you see it, I check my watch periodically at the time, that the inflorescence on a flower is really not adapted for our visual range. It's adapted for ultraviolet light wavelengths because insects see in UV. So that's what it's attracting. And so that leaf hopper that's on the leaf there sees that very differently, which is pretty cool. It's kind of like a neon sign for the insect. And then you got star chickweed, that's a really cool spring ephemeral. And then good old pawpaw. So pawpaw is a really cool flower. Luckily I got the flash on it. But you've got ants inside of it. You've got the fly on the edge. There's a lot going on there,
Pawpaw tree?
This is the pawpaw, this flower. For the fruit. So they bloom downward and they're very dark when you look at them with the naked eye. So you really need to shine a light on or have a flash camera in order to capture it. But it's a really cool plant. Everybody's probably every year. Yeah. Fan. It's cool fruit. You do. We were doing a construction project in Fairfax a few years back on stream restoration. And that summer, it was incredible. There were so many pawpaws and they were just dropping. It's not like when a walnut tree's dropping or a walnut grove, the pawpaw grove was dropping. People were feasting for weeks, all the construction crew, everybody. And then the same quarter, the persimmons were off the charts. So we just got this natural fruit like for almost a year on our one project. It's really cool. And then our native blueberries. All right, so now we're going over to the Legal State Park. And this is tidal wetland right on the Potomac River. Really cool place. You can see all the color in there. And the autumn sneezeweed, really cool plant. Again, you can readily grow this. This is Apios americana or groundnut, American groundnut. This is actually heavily eaten by Native Americans. It grows really readily in wetland complexes. This is a plant that's not supposed to be in Prince William County, but it is. It's a native called creeping burrweed. I just happened to photograph it. When I went back to check, it actually isn't listed in the digital atlas of Virginia flora as being occurring here. So kind of cool. And then right next to the tidal wetlands, a couple inches higher, maybe less than a foot, you're in a floodplain wetland that you can still see the tidal river, but you're slightly higher in elevation. That's when you get New York ironweed and your cardinal flower, Virginia dayflower, that's a really cool plant. And now we're switching over to Featherstone National Wildlife Refuge. You know how to get to that, park with the VRE, walk across to down the platform, and there's a big set of stairs on the back. Really cool place to explore. They were going to put a trash dump there in the 70s. And Elizabeth, what was her name? She also helped preserve stuff at Mason Neck. She stopped it. It was one of the dumbest things I've ever heard of. It's a tidal wetland. And they were going to put trash up it. So we got really lucky on that one. But this is a cool wetland. There's actually a heron rookery there. What's cool is you can't get it, but you can see it. So if you walk out on the trails here, Phil Causeway, you see the heron. One of the coolest things I've ever seen. Them watch herons feed when you're young. It's a really neat thing. So this is an emergent tidal wetland. Really neat pickerel weed dominant right here. And that's the pickerel weed. And of course, good old button bush. This is the most wet tolerant shrub, I think, in Virginia. It grows in permanent pools, which I don't think any other shrub can do. You'll see certain other shrubs growing, like I was at First Miami State Park this week. The buddy and I were hiking there down at Virginia Beach, and there's shrubs growing on the cypress knees, but not in the water. So, but buttonweed's the only one that can grow in the water. Yeah, really cool. Crimson-eyed mallow, our common marsh mallow, and good old swamp milkweed. So there's a great plant diversity there. So great place to hike. Check it out. Now, just back off the tidal wetland here to forested wetland, one of my favorite plants is lizard tail. This with the white inflorescence here. Easy to grow. I got mine from Rosanna, and I did is I took my downspout, I dug a depression below my downspout where it's shady, and just plopped in the lizard tail, and then it's happy. It's a really tough plant. So anyway, that's a really cool one. And this is one of the few places I've seen blue flag iris in Northern Virginia. So here at Covey Bay Regional Park, but really cool plant. It's one that's promoted a lot. We don't often see it a lot, but you usually see the yellow one, which is not native. And there's again Virginia dayflower. All right, and then so Occoquan Bay National Wildlife Refuge, it has gone downhill. These pictures were taken 14 years ago, and since then they let off, and they've had a lot of growth, grass repair. They've lost some of the fields. There's still some good areas. When they took this over, it was a Harry Diamond lab for the military, but they think the meadows have been mowed continuously since before the Civil War. Plant diversity is off the charts. So you can see really cool stuff at Occoquan Bay you can't see elsewhere. Plus there's really cool wetlands. Like purple Gerardia, that's blue mistflower, which again, you can readily buy it and grow it. Really good plant. This is field thistle. This is one of our true native thistles because there's a bunch of non-native ones. Easy way to tell, it's got a cluster of leaves right at the base of the flower. And when you flip the leaf over, it's white and woolly in the back. So those are two really good field marks that are easy for that one. And that first song of this, all that. Yeah. Oh, and this is wingstone. So this, they're great common plants, super aggressive. We use it in restoration sometimes because it is one of the natives that is so aggressive, especially when it's disturbed ground, that it will take an area over and it will compete readily with the babies. Good restoration. All right, so we're going to zip through some things now, and try to get to kind of talk a bit about what's the threats to our flora, and then turn to talk more about maybe how you can incorporate native plants. Now, there are much better speakers today on how to plant a site. I have a few slides, kind of pitiful, but my thing is ecology. And I do garden native plants, and I've been doing it, started here in Prince County back in 1993. So I get gardening here with native plants. And I used to live my first house, my ex-wife and I have is on an old dairy farm, Sunset Drive, crappiest soil you ever see. Orange, 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 lots of clay. And I was able to amend the soils. And by the way, my next door neighbor was a master gardener. She taught me a bunch of stuff. So, I learned by trial and error. But the bottom line is you can garden really well native plants in Prince County. So the big threats, of course, are human land disturbance. Talked about that already. And then redisturbance, oversimplification. A lot of what's left is simplified because there wasn't the seed source. There's still constant stress of redisturbance by humans, deer browse, invasive species. These things all affect them. And then we've got the other, so we'll go on with that. So that's NASA's composite of the Earth at night. So you wonder why we have a biodiversity problem. Well, there it is. It's us. So these are the facts from 2021 this came out of a joint workshop with the UN. I can't remember the different groups. It was all leading scientists that 77% of terrestrial Earth has been altered. And that's the big problem. 87% of the oceans have been affected by human activity. Another big, huge problem. And then we have lost 50% of the terrestrial biomass of plants since the beginning of the agricultural era, about 10,000 years ago. So that's 50% of the ability to support life on terrestrial Earth has been removed. Of the remaining plant biomass, a lot of it is crops. So when we've lost something like 70, we lost something, what was it? 70% or more of our total wild biomass has been lost in like, it's about 1970. And that's because of that alteration. It's an alteration of land. And then of the remaining vertebrates on Earth, or the animals, 96% is us, our livestock, and our pets. Only 4% is wild. So that's what we're faced with. That's our biodiversity crisis. And I just wanted to point out that biodiversity is all over. And every bit of it starts with on the land, starts with local native plants, period. That's it. Them and their associates in the soil. And that's what we're going to talk a bit about. So this is off of Massanutten Mountain. Love going there hiking. Sometimes a kid going to Shenandoah Valley. But I realized as I kind of came of age theologically in my mid-20s, coming back to the military and getting the environmental field, that this is looking at, I didn't understand assessing quality of the landscape in terms of its natural quality, the ability to support life. And this is actually, again, a biological waste. It's mostly non-native species. And then the native stuff is pushed up against the hills, and deer are in there eating everything. So it is really a difficult spot. There's really cool stuff there. There's some great biodiversity. There's also, it's really impoverished, especially on the valley floor. So we have from the floor about 3,200 species, about 750 those are non-native. Of the natives, of 2,450 natives, the 637 are considered rare. 230 decided that common. You can read there, but the bottom line is 40% of our native flora is really endangered because of the fragmentation like the surface and overbrowsing by deer. And then what we used to think is that if you left the place alone, it would just revert to something good. It's not going to happen. If something's heavily disturbed, you leave it alone, it's going to become invasive science. That's pretty much what happens. Plants, and you'll find that they will populate the area and be pretty good abundance. You might have some good diversity, but really need to intervene in most of the cases. So this brings us back to our depression swamp at Silver Lake. On that same property nearby, used to be up on depression swamp, was disturbed in the 20th century. Now it is red maple and Japanese silkgrass, period. That's it. 2 species. It will never be back anything close to what it was on the left. Because unless you gave it maybe a couple thousand years, it might no deer browse, whatever. But the bottom line is that it cannot revert readily on itself. It just takes too long to form the soil profiles and regain the species. Pretty typical. This is actually on Signal Hill Road, one of my old neighbor's properties. And this is what we typically see. And then this is also what we commonly see. Remaining natural areas are full of invasive species, oversimplified. This was a floodplain forest they had cattle grazing in it for dairy farming in the mid 20th century. And, it regrew in tulip tree and mostly invasive species below the tulip trees. And you can see they're really even age. So the deer have stopped any additional tree recruitment. There she is. Amazing animals. I do consume venison and I do hunt them. I do it because of the need to restore landscapes. And I will say that they are amazing. They are not a grazer, they're a browser. They can't eat old grass. The silica is too tough for their teeth. So they'll eat your lawn if you mow it because those fresh blades don't have a lot of silica. But they're mostly eating broadleaf plants. They're eating the buds off of the plants. They're eating acorns. They're really diverse in their ability to eat. And if you ever inside their mouth, they have this almost like platy flesh that protects them from the briars and stuff that they'll nibble on. They actually don't have upper teeth in the front. They only have lower. They strip stuff off. It's really cool. Of course, they are not a four-stomach ruminant. I think they're more like a rear gut. It's like a cecum. Anyway, but they do have rumen that they'll regurgitate their food when they're laying and re-chew it and re-swallow it. And so they're chewing on it almost all the time when they're laying. There's even a thought that they can take little naps while they're chewing. So pretty well, amazingly adaptive. Yeah. All right. So, and the problem is that we have exceeded the ecological carrying capacity. The problem with the North American hunting model is it's based on biological carrying capacity, which is the capacity of the land to support the animal until the animal's population crashes. And then the cultural carrying capacity, which is our tolerance for the animal. It never talks about ecological carrying capacity. So in 2015, when the Department of Wildlife Resources revised their deer plan, we heavily commented that they need to switch to ecological carrying capacity as the measure of whether or not there's too many deer. I know it's not popular because all their fees are paid for with licenses. So, but it's difficult to switch over to basically saying you got to recover the plants or the whole system. And that's what we're facing. All right. So I talked a lot about deer. I got to start moving. This is in Tyson's Corner, 16 deer in a herd, eating everything, living in urban landscapes. This is what it looks like in a deer overbrowse forest. And what happens is, in scientific studies, is as they eat the plants again and again, the root system shrink. First thing that happens is they don't reproduce. Then eventually they go locally extinct. And that's what's happened in a lot of our forests. I was in a forest doing a survey one time. There were no squirrels. There was nothing for the squirrels to eat. Because every acorn hit the ground was eaten by deer. It's amazing. There's never been enough forest without squirrels before in this region. So this is a Gettysburg National Battlefield Park. When they do have an active suppression program, instant regeneration. And that's what, when you look at nucleated plantings, planting in tight centers, it's mimicking nature because that's what nature does. When it's released from overbrowsing, just thousands of trees. And as I said, if you kill enough deer, the trees plant themselves. We don't need to plant the trees, we need to reduce the deer herds and stop disturbing the landscapes, and then the trees do all the planting. And then if you do reduce the herds, you get things like this, strawberry bush, which is in every forest in our region, clinging to life, being overbrowsed. Occasionally one gets up where it does not get browsed, it can actually bloom. Amazing plant. All right, some exposures can work. I think, so Keith this morning mentioned they had metal art, they had fenced 100 acres. In our region, that's the biggest one I know. Pennsylvania, they've done hundreds of acres.
Something like 85,
5
feet tall.
Yeah.
Way-
Well, over 8 feet tall, probably. They'll clear 5 foot fence. Yeah. All right, so invasive species, another huge thing for us. Most of them came as horde plants. Keith mentioned this today too. The rapid pear, off the charts. And then control methods, it's really what you have available, what you're dealing with, what resources you have on. People talk about goats, they eat all the natives too. So goats are a nice thought, but you have to basically use the goats to clear and then come back and spray the resprout with chemicals to kill them. Otherwise, the goats will just keep eating all the native plants, you have nothing. So, but they are an option for clearing fences in the first cut. And then I do recommend people keep herbicides in their back pocket because if done properly, if you get high control on the first application and it's very targeted, you're not using a lot of product, and you can sometimes get 8% of the population knocked down. So your next application is really low, very targeted. So and then we do this a lot with chemical is cut paint. I do a lot on my property because to kill the stuff I need to kill, you got to cut it chainsaw close to the ground and then paint. I use Darlon Trip Clear on the stump, but it kills it when you're done. And it's only on the stump. It works really well. And then just different ways of dipping. All right, cats, keep it aside. And there is a bill right now that hopefully allow communities to have cat control plans because they kill. The numbers are astounding. They kill somewhere, yeah, it's billions. So every year, from 1.3 to 4 billion birds in the 48 states. Somewhere 6.3 to 22 billion mammals. I mean, the numbers are off the charts. And these have been supported by study after study. This study was originally back in 2013. There's been a number of them since then. So the cats need to be indoors. Now I will say this: I've been on farms where there's nothing native, and the cats, they're all right. They're around the barn. There's so many house mice, rats, and they're doing a service. There's not high cat population. I got no troubles there because there's nothing native around, and they're killing a lot of non-native stuff. So other than that, like in urban areas, I think it's real problematic. All right, so one of the things we often don't talk about is the rise of sphere. So what's below ground? So we'll delve into that a bit right now because I think it's critical to understand soil profiles are the most important thing for intact plant communities. If the soil profile is disturbed heavily, recovering that is extremely difficult. So that's where restoration we have our biggest obstacles, is in the heavily disturbed soil profiles. What I always say is you need to understand the condition of the thing you're working in. If it's in good condition, don't disturb it, because you can't put it back. So that's the first rule being do no harm would be, the first rule really is to assess what you've got, determine what plant communities are present and what condition they're in, and make sure you don't do work in areas that you could make worse and you can't control. So anyway, the rhizosphere is so critical. That plant on the right is a fossil plant about 400 million years ago when plants came out of land, the vascular plants developed. And then what they think is that they actually develop their association with fungus, mycorrhizae, about that time. That 400 million years or so, plants and fungi on land have been growing together. And it's a critical thing. Oops, too far. All right, here we go. All right, so I do love this poster. The intent was to say, all of us can make a difference. We all make choices. Every action can have a positive or negative influence on what happens with our local environment. So I think the big thing is that we can get all discouraged and everything, but doesn't really get it. But what we can do, we can plant something negative. Every little bit helps. We can keep our cat indoors, even if you don't want to hunt, support people who actively thin herds, but then obviously protecting remaining natural areas and trying to restore additional areas is really good. So one of the things that was created back in about 20, whatever year it was, this is the conservation corridors map for Northern Virginia. And what it tried to do is highlight where there's remaining natural areas, cultural resources, things like that, and look at linkages. How can we build outwards from the remaining core areas to have more native stuff? And I will tell you Doug Townley's vision, which I totally support. We need to regreen all of our built areas with native plants. That the majority of the biomass needs to switch to native. This is Doug said this. So natural areas like this, you can't get back. This is a park where they haven't disturbed it, been left alone for 150 years at least probably. And there was no deer browsing. They've since gotten there. It's still a good place. There's just tons of stuff. Shrews, periodical cicadas, they only occur where there's old oak stands. That's it. If you disturb it, they're gone. And then Hercules beetles, what a cool order, that's the female. So anyway, there's so much stuff that happens in these high soil, high quality soil profiles, high diversity stands. The other one I really want to emphasize is the plethodons. These are the redback salamanders. They are the most abundant wild vertebrate in our region. And their presence is really critical for understanding the quality of what you're dealing with. High numbers of plethodons can give good soil profile with lots of invertebrates to eat. And that's one of the things we're doing. So I always call myself a plethodon farmer. That I lived over on Bentry Lane for 14 years in the woods. And I loved it every time. I had tons of plethodons. So my big thing was trying to promote those native salamanders. The other cool thing is they are the only salamander region that does not lay its eggs in water. It does not have to return to a pool. They live under logs in the female's garden. So it's really a neat thing. They're totally local. They stay right where they are their whole life. And they're tough. We were doing a cleanup one time along over near Costco. It was a really crappy roadside area that they were cutting all the brush out because people were worried about crime and everything. Then there was a whole group community cleanup project. It was a terrible landscape, and I found the redback salamander. I was like, all right, they're pretty tough. So, and then we'll get into the soils here, but soils are so critical. As you can see the role of woody debris. One of the measures when you do forest stand inventory is the degree of woody debris. Woody debris is critical for health forests. So it needs to have all that wood. And that's where you find, if you've ever done small mammal trapping or our salamander surveys, vertebrate surveys, you're always setting your trap lines or putting your pitfall traps along logs. That's where everything lives. So that's where a lot of the life in the forest is concentrated, is in this down woody debris. Little mice. I watched this really cool one day. I watched this black snake in the woods. It was foraging. I watched it around this log. It was hollow in it, a cut log. And the black snake went in. All of a sudden, you saw it tense up. It ate at least 3 mice in one sitting. You could watch it digesting and all the lumps showing up. It was pretty wild. All right, so vernal pools. Vernal pools are, obviously critical for all other amphibians other than that one salamander in our region to breed. So they have to go back there to breed. This is a really rare vernal pool type. It's an upland depression area. This is in Fairfax County, this one. But what people forget as a wood frog is that you cannot save the vernal pool without saving the woods. All the juveniles and adults, once they leave the pool, live in the woods. It's the only place to live. It's the only place they can live. And that's where they live the entire year, except for the brief period of time where either they're going back to breed or they're a larva getting ready to emerge. So it's a minimum of 750 feet out from the edge of that pool is the critical zone. And that's what needs to be preserved when you do to have this breeding habitat. Now, you can still have breeders in compromised habitat, but it's simply not going to be as diverse. That's just the upland woods around the pool. And then there's, really cool. So the red F is just the terrestrial stage for the red spotted newt. Oh, there it is. Red spotted newt, which is the adult. And then the lower left is our largest salamander, spotted mole salamander, so it burrows into the ground. And then on the right is a larva marbled salamander. I took that picture of Merrimack Farm. So they have these really cool gills when they're in the marbled stage. What's cool about marbled salamanders is they lay and fall. And the reason they do that is that they're the dominant critter of the pool. So they're eating everything else because they go into the time that there isn't competition. So they're eating all the little amphipods and everything. Neat. All right, so getting started. And by the picture on the right, I love it. We were out doing surveys one day and I saw this twisting and it was 2 millipedes. And it turned out they were copulating. I didn't realize that they opened their mantle and their hermaphroditic swap material. It's really, anyway, pretty well. Copulating millipedes. So I read this rule when I used to do a lot of interpretive education. That we have these buses with the kids show up. And your lesson plan is this. This hour, we'll talk about this. One day I'm crossing along with a group of first graders and there's turtles copulating on the lawn. And I discovered that day my copulating turtle, if turtles copulating, that's what we're talking about. Whatever else you have playing, it's not talking. So think about where you are, the landscape context, what's around you. If you can't have big trees on your property, well, maybe there's big trees close by. And what you're doing is you're supplementing. You're gonna plant things that complement that tree stand. Do what you can on what the area you have. Also, you have to know your resources available, availability of water, and also look at things around you. Get ideas from the remaining natural states. That's where you're gonna find your cool examples of good stuff. And the natural landscaping, because I always talk a lot on the slides and I have too many of them. But it really is trying to put back natural processes, and the basis of it is native plants. Locally native plants is the foundation for everything within that putting back function. And then we talked about building on local ecology. I do have this rule of making it interesting for kids because I realize most lawns most yards are really warm. And the yards, I was walking my kids one day, we were out on a walk in the neighborhood I grew up in Arlington, and there was this picture. Anyway, there was this yard that had a really cool, it wasn't native, but it was like you wanted to go explore it, So it'd make it interesting. And that's that's kind of more what nature does. It's got lots of layers, it's raw, it's not vertical and horizontal. And what's really cool is I remember again taking my kids to Mount Vernon, and of course they had tons of native plants and they gardened with them. So, because there was lots of stuff around back then. And then even our older neighborhoods. I grew up in an old neighborhood with big trees. There was a lot of good stuff in those neighborhoods, and there's also some native plants that were mixed into the plant balance pretty early on. Maintenance, so think about that up front. Like when you do restoration, like reforestation, that the plantation style plantings with all the grass around, it's terrible. You have low survival rates, low growth rates, relatively low, the diversity of balance is pretty low. And it's really hard to maintain against invasive species because you don't want to hit the trees. So we adapted to nucleated planting, plant clumps. The beauty of it is you can suppress the material that grow a lot faster, we survive better, but also you can mow. Mowing is the cheapest option if you're trying to do restoration. All right, so we can create talking about creating a resource map. Think about what's around you. This is a townhouse in Stafford, but you've got a wooded edge around it. It's really good, even though there's a lot of mowing. And you can basically say, okay, what can I bring in from that wooded edge and offer them something here, with around the townhouse itself. And again, so you can use Google Earth, really easy to get landscape context for what's around you. on what you can provide to give a property. This is at the same townhouse. There was a really nice wood edge with lots of woody debris and a good quality mixed heated hardwood fork with some pines in it. So it had been cut at some point, 20th century, but it had tons of stuff in it. And then just thinking about what's healthy and what's not. On the right, that's a intact forest stand with lots of leaf litter, no invasives, got deer growl problems. But the key thing there is you don't want to disturb it. On the left, lots of invasives, even age planted, trees, so low quality stand. So when we were thinking about restoration, we want to work on the one on the left. We can actually improve the condition of that one. We want to stay out of the one on the right, other than the limit the stressors. Another thing is, this is a house where they didn't cut down all the trees. It's actually a really cool lot. This is also in Stafford, but it's a typical neighborhood. It's got the neatest lot overall. Tons of moss. It's got mountain laurel, stuff like that. So it's a really neat property with a really good core to it. This is a remnant on the property. I used to live on Bentry Lane, where they cut some trees down, but they left the soil profile. Great native plants already in there. Wild strawberry, this pussy toes, wild ginger. Also remnants like, it had pink azalea, blueberry. And then this was right along Signal Hill Road. This is called the Frosia virginiana, one of the coolest pea plants I've ever found. Just growing out of the sandy, sunny bank. And you walk around your neighborhood, you can find some packed remnants. I used to collect seed off of these plants and some places, also in my yard, and I recruited quite a few plants that way. So thinking about your space, and again, other people did this a lot better than I did earlier today. But the most important thing is the time we say to flip it. Go from that bare lawn with a few woody things to lots of woody things and herbaceous things and a little bit of lawn. And so my attempt here was to say, really plan that space in. Like Steve was saying, figure out where you want to go, what you want to do, and then plant in with native plants to the large majority as the goal. And then here's some examples of people doing it. These are also things that, reasons why it does improve our human. There's a lot of studies now that nature bathing, if you want to call it that, but contact with natural systems is really good for us. It makes us produce chemicals that lower blood pressure, reduce stress. And when you're in a natural area that's good quality, the trees are actually producing chemicals that you breathe in that help your health. So we evolved with these species. It's the reason why we feel better when we're. And that's what the benefit we get. It's not just providing benefits for natural systems, other things. This is in Arlington. Again, we talked about the rhizosphere below ground. We don't talk good. I might actually do this. So many slides. So we're protecting and restoring soil. We've talked a lot about this already. The importance of soil profiles and what's in them, the health of the system. So, and you can rebuild them. The first house I was in here in Princeton County with cracking soils. What I did do the first year is I took newspaper and I got mulch. And I took this whole area in the backyard and I just created a path I wanted to keep. And I just put newspaper everywhere and mulched the heck out of it. And within a year, I had vastly improved soil. So I started planting through there. I was able to grow a nice native plant garden for about 60% of the backyard. All right, so what we're trying to do is mimic this. And what I was on a technical review committee for the Saltwater Conservation District for many years, helping people evaluate restoration plans for natural landscaping. And when they had erosion issues in their yard, it's usually because they took away the leaves and the woody debris. They had trees and the stuff was falling, and they were removing it, and then it would erode. So what I always say to people is, this is one of the best things you can do is recruit your free organic material in the way of leaves and woody debris. This is what we typically do. I took this picture years ago here in Manassas. And we lose all that profile. This is after 38 years that was cut into, that turf grass only had 2 inches of root because the soil was so compacted, it couldn't penetrate. And if you can re-aerate that, you can get tons of water in that soil profile. You can do that through, this is deep tine ripping. We've done this on projects before. Also disking can really help. A good old tiller. I've even done the hand thing here. If you have an opportunity to make some smaller rippers for lawns, also if we were doing a little bit larger project and you get a box rotavator for a small tractor, that is the bomb. You can really turn that soil over and aerate down pretty deep. This is overall Signal Hill Road Elementary School, just next to the parking lot. You look at the good old broom sedge. just the grass is doing all the work. So one of the things you can do, if you're able to put native warm season grasses in, they can actually begin to pump carbon back into your soil profile and aerate it and really get it fluffed up. You need to increase the porosity, let the grass do the work. It's bioengineering. And it's been going on for millions of years. We can just give it a little bit of time. All right, just the root system of prairie plants. And then root exudate. So what we don't fail to realize is that plants are pumping 5 to 20% of the sugars they produce into the dirt, not in the roots, into the dirt. They're feeding everything. So we talk about mycorrhizal fungi, cytoplasmic streams, like a pipeline. And plants that are healthy are pumping more sugar in, it's pressure gradient, and they're pushing through the pipeline. So plants that are less healthy are pulling it out. They're not doing it because they're altruistic. They're doing it because they're healthy and they're pushing all these sugars. And it turns out that's what's growing bacteria. Bacteria in turn eat the sugar and they release nitrogen that's available to the plant. So there's all these complex things going on in the soil that are they're pretty amazing. So the mycorrhizae is just a relationship between the plant and the fungi. And they think 90% of terrestrial plants are much better off and often require a mycorrhizal association. So that's a really critical piece. And this is from the Claudia West Thomas Rainier book. It really just shows that layering of the planting, that plants share space above and below ground. They layer their roots as well as they layer their above ground parts. And it's really important. And again, if they're creating a system, they're sharing the fungal network. So there's a mutualness to that. So water critical. One of the things I just want to really emphasize is that you do need to get increased porosity in your soil. You should be able to hold every bit of rain that falls on your property, with the exception of really big storms that come really fast. If you get an inch of rain in an hour, it should all go into the ground. And it should be rehydrated that soil profile. But what happens in the urban soils, you know, the topsoil stripped off, they run it with a bulldozer and they slap sod down, and it's like concrete. So you have to re-aerate that. You need deep plug aeration, you need some other methods, but getting that water in there is really cool. And then leaving your leaves. So much happens in that leaf profile. And then, you know, think about native gardening, just some examples of people, just some pretty cool stuff. That's that interesting thing, make it interesting. So you want to go back on that trail. And this is even here at a townhouse here in Prince William County where it was just rack of construction. And I know purple cone flowers and 100% native, but it is a good you know, gateway. There's some other native plants that we put here too. Just changing up that kind of boring sterile planting with some things that are more interesting. Nandina is one of the banes of, yeah. Anyway, it turns out it's really easy to dig up. And then this garden we did, we dug that up. We got stuff to native plant sale. And that first season, that's what we got. So you can grow them really quickly. And that's that, unfortunately, it's the Tovera that's probably not native. They thought it was cultivar, but the one with the funky leaves and the red blossoms, but everything else is. Here's your immediate plant. And these are some slides from Audubon. All right. Yeah. So just Audubon talks about layering and assessing kind of what's there. Taking it from a skewed thing for decoration to a balanced palette that looks at all the different ecosystem services. And then just thinking about what you're providing for wildlife, you know, this is the old National Wildlife Federation: food, water, shelter, and places to raise young. Those are your 4 things to consider with animals. And that's, by the way, on the left is a mockingbird nest in a lattice that we're growing vines on. Just a great place to nest. Yeah, and just sharing our spaces, just out of the contrast. And then there's some things in here. I'll go through these pretty quickly. I think we'll upload these maybe to the web because I've got a few resources if you want them. Let me hit a couple things here. So this is just about the insect decline. Talk a lot about decline, so won't linger on that. This is a statement from Vitality. It's critical to trophic transfer. It's the locally native plants, feeding the insect, feeding everything else. And the caterpillars, he mentioned that this morning, we saw that criticality. And then that relationship between insects and plants is critical. It's amazing. So it's only those local native plants that provide that benefit. So as Desiree Narango, she did her research in our region, and she was looking at, you know, that need for native plant biomass in order for birds to be able to live and reproduce. And that was what she was talking about. You need to have those native trees. And then
Doug Calamine, if you haven't read Nature's Best Hope, I think it's a really good book to read. We talked earlier today about the keystone plant species that are really putting those into your system. And you can pull this offline. There's also the Native Plant Finder tool, which allows you to find those for your region, which have the highest association with insects. It's Native Plant Finder, and it's the National Wildlife Federation. And then just a reminder that we need heterogeneity in our landscapes. This is our Virginia butterfly species, tiger swallowtail. This is our really, really cool larva that spends 3 of its life cycle stages in the woods. So remember, the vast majority of our butterflies need woods for 3 out of 3 of their life cycle stages. Egg, larvae eating tree leaves, and they pupate in the leaf litter. And then that's what I was able to see one coming out, emerging in the spring. It's only then that they go to seek your herbaceous plants from there. So it is that criticality of the lots of different habitat types across the landscape that we need to maintain these organisms. So I think what I'll do is, because again, I talked way too much. I've got more slides on there, but I'll take a couple questions, and I know we want to try to land all the time. I will.
Fine.
All right, cool.
Any questions, Madam Speaker?
When you were talking about, the difference between disturbing soil and, and not disturbing it, because for profile, you need to disturb it in order to fix the soil profile, and then as opposed to the other. Obviously, you can do some soil testing, but how do you deal with large pieces of, like, I don't want to just do a garden, I want to do 4 acres, but that's an agricultural pasture.
If it's already disturbed, does it in poor condition?
I mean, let's assume for argument's sake it is.
Yeah, when I'm just saying don't disturb, I'm referring to if you have an intact remnant,
Forest, yeah.
good leaf litter, good plant diversity, you're gonna mess that up. So try not to disturb that. If it's already been disturbed, I think a couple people said it earlier today, just be careful what you bite off. Because as soon as you bite it off, you're gonna have to, so you might wanna do pieces at a time based on your resource availability. But I wouldn't worry about disturbing previously disturbed soils, because you're gonna work to improve them. I would get organics on them as quickly as possible, try to get native plants established in the larger areas possible, and get that biomass up. And then, try to use leaf litter, leaf mulch, really positive. So but yeah, I
I
wouldn't
guess
worry.
I just think about like when you were showing the pictures of like disking and things like that, like doesn't that actually damage the actual soil? I mean, I know the soil.
That's not
anyway.
soil, that's dirt.
Okay. So I don't need to worry about doing
Yeah.
like burning.
When you got dirt, when it's been so abused for so long,
Doesn't matter.
don't worry.
Okay. All right.
you're gonna improve it with putting the plants in, getting that root system established, getting more organics in there, and then it'll rest. Because at that point, once you've established a plant community, that will begin over time to really develop those soils. There'll be all the things working with the plants. They're recruiting the mycorrhizal fungi from the air. The spores everywhere.
Okay, so the no-till is for soil, not dirt.
Yes, for good soils with intact
Got
plant
it, got it,
communities
got
on.
it. Okay, all right, thanks. So if you have an area that's undisturbed.
Yeah.
And, well, as much as possible around here. Like I live in the woods, and I've been wanting to just sort of, shove some bluebells into a spot that might be good for them. Is that something I should be doing, or should I be?
That's entirely your call. I mean, the key is, I just want to avoid large scale disturbance.
Okay,
The
no,
other thing to remember, this is the thing I try to do on my property. Try to recruit from the existing seed bed. What you'll find is if you can reduce the deer browse, even by fencing, let your dog run out there, pee all the time, and bark at them, whatever it is, I found that you recruit all kinds of plants. Really cool stuff pops out of the soil and it's there.
okay,
But yes, I don't think it's problematic to put things in here and there.
okay, because I've been also taking like plastic, like tubes and things, and just if I find something cool, I'm like, okay, the deer are gonna eat this, so I'm gonna shove this right here or something.
Whatever you can do, yeah. I'm taking that, if you do it small enough area, you can use 4-foot fence. If deer will not jump in, if it's like 10 to 12 feet across.
Okay.
If it's any bigger than that, they jump in.
Okay.
If it's bigger than that, you have to go to 8 feet.
Okay.
Because they'll clear a 6-foot fence.
That's great.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of large oak and very compacted bad soil underneath it. And so I'm kind of curious, what do you do? Is that just leaving leaf litter or better mulch
Yes.
or, okay.
I would suggest do not remove the leaves.
Okay.
And there was a guy from Davy Tree, a soil expert, who does really cool talk. He was saying that just by putting 1 inch of leaf mulch on a compacted soil area and after 1 year, there's significant improvement in porosity. and reduction in compaction. So it's absolutely leaving the leaves.
So it's that easy.
Leave the leaves and the woody debris that falls, just leave them all there.
If you have a huge amount of trees, leave it all,
Well, here's the key.
like this
The,
much.
the organisms that live there, they're evolved to live in that system with those leaves. What you don't want to do is blow a whole bunch of, you don't want to make it 3 feet thick by blowing a whole bunch of extra. What I used to do is I pick a sacrifice area. I would take it, where I currently am, I suck them up and make my own leaf mulch, and I store it in an area near one of my sheds. And my old property was, I didn't have much room, had just about an acre. I picked a sacrifice area off the side of the house that had really low veg quality, and all my extra leaves I dumped there. But everywhere else, I just let whatever fell lay. And that's the best thing to do. Yeah, I wouldn't pile them up, but they can absolutely, they're evolved to handle that leaf mess.
We have an area that we have some grass, like there is some of it, the side, but we have some grass. You leave the leaves right on the grass, I thought it killed.
Well, here's what I've done for years, is just run your mower over top of the leaves and grind them up and fall, and they'll break down. No problem. You don't have to remove them anymore. It's kind of cracks me up because it's better for your lawn. You pick up a mulching mower, it's better for it.
Anything else?
Cool.
Thank you.
Well,